As the world's two most populous nations take cautious steps toward reconciliation, India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri's visit to China on the 26th and 27th of January marks a critical moment in the evolving dynamics between the two countries. This is not just another diplomatic meeting. It's a test of whether these Asian giants can sustain the fragile thaw in their relations after years of confrontation. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. After more than 4 years of heightened tensions and standoffs along the LAC, 2024 witnessed a turning point in India-China relations. The resumption of patrolling agreements and historic handshake between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping at the BRICS summit in October of 2024 paved the way for renewed dialogue. Misri's visit builds on this momentum, aiming to address unresolved issues that could either strengthen or strain bilateral ties. One of the thorniest issues on the table is the ballooning trade deficit. India's dependency on Chinese goods has reached alarming levels, with the deficit surpassing $85 billion. This imbalance, particularly in key sectors like electronics and pharmaceuticals, has raised questions about economic sovereignty. While the 2024 agreements have eased some tensions along the LAC, the border dispute remains far from resolved.
Appropriate that I have the opportunity now to share with you. I can share with you that over the last several weeks, Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators have been in close contact with each other in a variety of forums. And as a result of these discussions, agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas, leading to disengagement and a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020. And we will be taking the next steps on this.
段时间以来，中印双方通过外交和军事渠道，就中印边境的有关问题保持密切沟通。目前，双方已就有关问题达成了解决方案，中方对此予以积极评价。下一步，中方将与印方落实好上述解决方案。关于你提到的双边会见。 昨天我也回答了相关的问题，如有相关的消息，中方将及时发布。
Misri's visit is expected to address the current status of disengagement and explore confidence-building measures to prevent future standoffs. India's northeastern states face an existential challenge. China's construction of hydroelectric dams on rivers flowing into Indian territory. These projects could alter water availability and disrupt the ecological balance in the region. Misri's agenda likely includes calls for real-time data sharing and mechanisms to ensure that China's upstream activities don't jeopardize India's water security. I spoke with Gaurav Sawant, Managing Editor, India Today TV, on what these issues really mean for India, what is on the agenda, and what could the outcome look like. This is what our interaction looked like. Take a look. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri going to China and the kind of engagements we are seeing, there are a few very important areas that always come up during discussions and talks. To discuss that and what this visit means, I'm being joined by Gaurav Sawant, Managing Editor, India Today TV. Gaurav, let's begin with what was most important to India in the recent past, which is the disengagement that was needed at the eastern sector in Ladakh. And that happened, but where do you see it head from here on? You were in Kazan when the important meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi took place, and then the surprise announcement by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. And today we're looking at him again revisiting, going to Beijing. There have been n number of engagements before that. So what's your reading?
So perhaps China has realized that its effort to browbeat India hasn't worked. Its efforts at amassing troops at the borders, they've met with India's counter deployment, and it's a stalemate. So when a powerful country and an emerging country enter into a stalemate that lasts from 2020 now to 2024 or 25, it's basically defeat for China. So now they're trying some other tactics. So what happens? October, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping met. But before this informal summit, there were several other conversations that were already taking place. You reported extensively on Wang Yi's visit and other military talks or diplomatic talks that were continuously happening, and indications from China were let's talk peace, let's move forward. They wanted to move forward despite border, and India's red line was peaceful borders for relationship to move forward. So there's been disengagement, but only disengagement, no de-escalation and no de-induction. So it's a three-step process. Step one has happened. China wants to move forward. So October, the heads of state and government met in Kazan. November, our foreign minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and the Chinese foreign minister, Wang Yi, met G20 Rio. Yes. And December, our national security advisor traveled and had SR level talks. So October, November, December engagement has taken place. Now January. So every month there's engagement. Will it lead to incremental forward movement is the big question.
Well, again, Gaurav, this comes at a time, and you were in the United States of America when the inauguration of Trump's new presidency was taking place. I covered the win of Trump in November, and all through the messaging has been that they want to engage China. Although earlier it was about how they're going to take on China, but he made a call ahead of the oath taking. He made that call to Chinese President Xi Jinping. In such a scenario where you're seeing that America also is looking at engaging China rather than having confrontationist, relationship with China, what's your reading on how India is managing and navigating this space with China?
It's
a difficult one.
Yeah, but the best thing India has done, India has never put all our eggs in any one basket, neither the Russian basket nor the American basket. And, the world is not very happy with our multi-alignment, but it's holding India in good stead, at least so far. So America may want to try engaging with China, but then ultimately what's the big story? China wants to be world number one, America wants to remain world number one. So even if they shake hands, there will be no meeting of the hearts and minds.
There isn't.
So
Absolutely not.
And President Trump's choices for his national security advisor, his Secretary of State, they're very clear indications that they want America first. So if they want America first, their shaking hands with China will not lead to...
Not just America first, they do also want to contain China. Their position has been very clear on China, whether it's Marco Rubio or for that matter,
Mike Waltz.
Mike Waltz.
So, and to do that, they need a very strong India. And India also, look, these are the two most powerful democracies in the world, oldest and the most powerful democracies in the world. So what are they doing? India, remember, at times we were being egged on to take on China, but we didn't do that. India didn't do that. India, a message was sent, but at the same time, India's China policy is independent India-China policy for peace at our borders, and then relationship moves forward in our interest, and let's see in Chinese interest. But we would want American help for better intelligence, for better equipment, to ensure that China does not bully us.
Right. What's the situation at the border right now? We've seen withdrawal, we've seen disengagement, and we've seen patrolling having begun. But there is more to what India really wants in terms of status quo.
So, unfortunately, there's no withdrawal so far. There's disengagement, which means you're not eyeball to eyeball. But you have 50,000 troops. India has 50,000 plus troops on our side. The Chinese have more than 50,000 troops, and they're building infrastructure. So if they're building infrastructure in a very big way, they may want to be buying more time, because they may have thought that they'll send in 2 divisions and they'll succeed in browbeating us. And then they realize they couldn't browbeat us because we managed mirror deployment, and we are building infrastructure very fast in the border areas. So they may want to build even more. And yet
there
continue.
Hasn't been a withdrawal, but
no de-escalation.
And
patrolling has resumed. So 2 rounds of patrolling has happened already.
Only in certain areas.
In the 2 remaining friction areas. Yeah. So let's take in Depsang and Demchok, the remaining 2 friction areas. We are patrolling up to the points that we were patrolling pre-2020, up to our designated patrolling points, and so are they. There is a mechanism that's been worked out on either side of the borders. When their patrols come, we escort them. When our patrols go, they are taken up to a certain point to ensure that there's a level of confidence between the two. But is there trust between the two? After Galwan, clearly not.
Absolutely not. But in terms of the other aspect, which is very important for India, and India does have comes from a place of disadvantage, and that has to do with trade. The imbalance is immense, and it's only growing because despite the bans, despite the kind of import bans that India put on certain products post the COVID-19 pandemic, and having banned a few apps, the trade imbalance has not improved. Rather, it has only
worsened.
Yeah, it has only worsened. So, how do you see that conversation move forward between the two countries when Vikram Misri is there? Because these are areas that India would like to discuss.
So there are two things. India is seeking greater access to Chinese markets. Will they give us those access? And India is moving forward on multiple fronts. India is also seeking that China accepts where they are on the map. China also has to tell us what their claim line is. Their claim line keeps changing, and they give nothing in writing.
Nothing.
So they want to keep.
Between India and China, there has been hardly any exchange of maps, which in itself speaks volumes of two countries, neighboring countries, that have been constantly talking about resolving the outstanding issue of the border question, and there have been no exchange of maps per se.
Because once upon
Except
a time,
for the middle sector.
No, so even in the middle sector, while they may talk about it, they may claim something today, and they may show you something, they withdraw it.
Yeah.
And then there is nothing on paper that's exchanged. So that is, they want to keep you on the defensive, except when you keep increasing your strength, then they know wherever your troops are deployed.
But they also keep increasing their claims.
They keep increasing their claims. But
increasing
once upon a time, like what we hear and what we read is they had said, let's exchange whatever they had kept in Ladakh becomes theirs, which means Aksai Chin becomes theirs, and entire Arunachal Pradesh becomes ours. This was what Chao En-lai had suggested to Pandit Nehru, but that was never accepted. Then the 62 war happened, and India lost a lot of territory during the 62 India-China conflict. Of course, subsequently, there has been intense jockeying. We saw what happened in 1967 in Nathula. We saw what happened in Sundarongchu in 1986. And we saw recently what happened in Yangtze. So all along, the more India increases our military strength, lesser are the chances of friction. And that is why China is building. Do keep one thing in mind. China has an inherent disadvantage. China has to cross its mainland, and China occupies Tibet. So it has to send all its forces, replenishments, resources, supplies across Tibet at that altitude to be able to come fight India in our territory.
But Gaurav, in terms
militarily, China is at a great disadvantage. It's only the emotionally.
But Tibet makes it an advantage because it's a plateau.
At a high altitude plateau.
In India, for us,
it's a high altitude plateau.
The hilly terrains become a real impediment, and we've seen that on the ground.
That is because India hadn't built up infrastructure in the past.
Yeah, but they already have built.
So correct.
Tibet
so they
is
had an advantage. No, Tibet is a disadvantage for China. They have to cross 700 plus kilometers.
But right now they have the infrastructure. They've already built that
infrastructure. Should the balloon goes up, that infrastructure gets taken down. It's not an advantage. That's the point. That's the point that all military experts and analysts and commanders make on ground, that India strategically has an advantage. Tibet is China's Achilles heel in more ways than one, that can be exploited in more ways than one. Tibet is being occupied by China. China is an occupation army in Tibet. When you accept it and you say, okay, they're putting more soldiers in their own territory and it's their territory, it is not their territory. Point one.
That we would agree with that,
two,
but India has already recognized it as an autonomous region.
If they step back, you step back. Yeah. You don't have to be, Yudhishthir and fight
but I'm just saying that India has.
Dharm Yudh. If they go back on all the pledges that have been made 1993,
Are you saying we should go back on the...
We go back on everything they go back on.
Should we go back on this one?
We go back on everything. Absolutely. So put China in its place.
If that happens...
Then just India.
Then but if India does it, it's huge.
The
because
world
we're a
will
neighboring country. We no longer will be a neighbor of China.
Absolutely. We're not neighbors with China.
We would be near neighbors, which is what Afghanistan is, a near neighbor. So China would become from a neighbor to a near neighbor.
Which is what India must do. I mean, we must accept the fact that China occupies Tibet. It's a fact. No point going soft on a hard issue where it impacts your national security. I'm certain. Look, Donald Trump in America, Narendra Modi in India, and there are several world leaders who will ultimately come around the point that when any expansionist force is a threat to democracy. And democracies need to come together to checkmate an expansionist force that ill-treats its own people in the Uyghur region, in Tibet, the atrocities that are happening there, the truth about COVID pandemic. You must talk about all of those issues. Yeah. No point Hindi Chini bhai bhai when they're,
But that bhaichara is happening right now. So let's go
I'm
back
not
to the...
I'm not sure if bhaichara is happening.
Oh, okay, let's just go back to Misri's visit to Beijing. We have border covered quite widely now. So let's move on. We were talking about trade. There is going to be some conversation. Yes. There is, like for us, trade could be an area of concern because of the imbalance. For China, and I was speaking to some officials, they say visas are a concern because the Chinese nationals don't get visas.
They want more. They want a direct flight from Beijing to New Delhi.
They do. Is that a part of? Do you envisage a conversation that could lead to resumption of flights?
They would want it. They are very keen. So it depends on how much are we willing to give and what are we taking in return. Will our pharmaceuticals get more access to the Chinese market? If they give us more access, it's give and take. And when everyone says that Trump believes in hard-nosed bargaining, I'm sure so does Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Dr. Jaishankar and Vikram Misri. Mr. Vikram Misri has been a China hand. I've been an ambassador there.
Very well.
And these are people who understand the Chinese mind and are not subservient to the Chinese mind. Sometimes we've had that problem in the past. In our history, we've seen that often the correct advice wasn't given to political leadership, or at least that is what political leaders claimed. At least I hope now I'm certain they're getting perfect advice. They're getting better advice, and from all actions on ground, you see India is neither scared nor subservient. You see that on ground in terms of your deployment, in terms of action that is being taken. There are some things that are still not in public domain, but China knows it and India knows it. That China also has reason to be concerned. China's in trouble on the Pakistan front too, on China-Pakistan economic corridor.
They've lost nationals in Pakistan.
They've lost nationals in Pakistan. I believe they've had fatalities even recently.
That's in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's in Afghanistan. So,
but the AFPAC region has become very, very a treacherous area for China and China's Belt and Road Initiative, which goes through this very region.
And Pakistan's one big fear is that in case the Wakhan corridor is activated and China gets access to Iran, then Pakistan is dead meat. So Pakistan is also very worried right now. So the balls are up in the air.
But we will talk about geopolitics. Before that, there's another very important bilateral aspect to the meeting that is going to take place, and that's one where India has raised concerns. And only today, the Charge d'Affaires of the Chinese embassy in a written article said that it is not a threat because it is not directed against India. It will not impact India, which is the projects they have on the Brahmaputra. Not the first time.
Who can believe that?
No, but not the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
They've been doing this for years, and every time they say run of the river, run of the river, run of the river. Is it run of the river? How concerned should India be? Is this something that will be part of the conversation when Vikram Misri meets his counterpart, who in fact was the former Chinese ambassador to India, Ambassador Luo? So is that something that will come up because India has voiced it openly with the MEA putting out a statement, and now the Chinese side ahead of this meeting has said that there's nothing to worry.
The moment China says there's nothing to worry, we should be very worried. We should be very, very worried. Because with China, at least now we've learned that we shouldn't just follow what they say. We should just follow what they do. And what they do on ground gives us reason to be very concerned. Building a dam and the kind of dam that they're building on the Brahmaputra, there's trouble for us, there's trouble for Bangladesh. But before that, there's trouble for us in Assam in a very big way. And they don't share information with us. There is an agreement that they will share information with us.
Yes.
I'm told that we've paid for it,
the hydrological
data, and yet we haven't got it, and that's given that's a reason for concern. So China actually weaponizes natural resources against us.
In a rare moment, there was sharing of water data, but that is very few and far between.
Which is supposed to be, when we do it regularly, and it is an international norm to do it, and China doesn't do it. And yeah, so that is why you shouldn't go by what China says, but see all the action that follows on ground. And I don't think anybody in India, at least in today's day and age, except perhaps some fossils from another era, nobody takes China's words seriously. Everyone watches China's actions. And
are you also going to be wary of what the outcome of this meeting is going to be, and will that really stand in good stead?
No, so if they're starting the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra once again, and if they're increasing people-to-people interaction and cooperation, that's something that you look forward to. The resumption of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, and to remain engaged is always a good idea, except with a terrorist state like Pakistan, where the engagement should be restricted just to the government level, in my view. But let's see if something good comes out of China. If China learns its lesson, because which is very unlikely to do given its history, but given the fact that you have a powerful democracy that's standing up and is not subservient to Chinese interests like the United States of America earlier, the fact that you have India that's been very firm since 2020, I think cautious forward movement is always a good idea. And then it's a wait and watch approach. There are mid-course corrections that will happen constantly. Something goes wrong, you immediately indulge in mid-course correction.
Cautious approach and a wait and watch, two very important takeaways from what can be expected of the meeting between India and China that will take place in Beijing. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is going to be there. We'll be tracking all the details on that front. Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us for now.
Cheers.
Vikram Misri's visit to China is more than a diplomatic mission. It's a litmus test for the future of India-China relations. From trade and border disputes to water security and visas, the stakes couldn't be higher. For two nations that share a history of conflict and cooperation, this moment offers a chance to redefine their narrative. And this comes at a time when Trump has taken over the presidency in the United States of America. So will they seize it or let old wounds fester?